Come on, everyone sit down and listen to the greatest debate in all of history. We'll give you everything that you've been missing. Introducing Nothing Special.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nothing Specialty. I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
And I'm Ben.
So what's been going
your week
on?
been like, man?
I asked you first.
Sure, why not? Nothing much, just a lot of work. Learning some new, interesting stuff in the news. Learning some new stuff in school.
Cool.
Nothing too special, just a normal week for me. How about you?
Well, same here. I've been, doing school. School's kind of wrapping up now, and I've been doing. So I just yesterday I was in a mock amateur debate tournament for my argument and debate class, and so that was fun. I went 2-2, so I'm not the best debater here, but I won a couple rounds, so that's cool.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a panel of judges who decided who won.
Well, for each of the rounds, because it was two classes that were competing, so there weren't enough judges to have multiple. So for the first for those four, there was just one judge that was judging each round for each person, because we just broke up into all different rooms and debated at the same time. But then for
Gotcha.
There were four people that went 4-0 for those first four rounds, and so they did a final kind of thing to get first, second, third, and fourth place.
Oh, okay.
So, but I was 2-2, so I didn't qualify.
Aw. Oh well.
I've also been so I was looking into One Piece. You've watched some of One Piece, right?
It's actually I'm not a huge anime fan. It's one of the few ones I can say I'm a fan of.
So how much of it have you seen?
So I've seen all the way through. I'm trying to remember. I'm not up to date on it because I've just been so busy lately. But I've seen all the way up to a point where they're on an island that's pretty much a walking elephant.
I've heard there was a time skip somewhere in the middle. Is that before or after that?
I'm way past the time skip at this point.
Oh, okay, cool. So that gives me a kind of an idea from what I've heard. But so I was looking into the different ways of watching it, and I watched just the first 2 or 3 chapters of the manga, up to where they get Zoro, and so I watched the dub, and I read the manga to see what it looked like for those first 3 chapters. And then I tried this thing called One Pace, and it's a re-edit by a fan that takes out a bunch of the unnecessary panning wide shots and stuff that wasn't in the manga that was added to the anime, and it basically makes it so it's just a video version of the manga. It makes it a lot more true to the original material.
Okay.
And so from reading the manga and watching One Piece and watching the actual series, I think from there, now that they have Zoro, I'm going to continue with One Piece, because it seems like it's a lot cleaner, and, well, not clean as in dirty or whatever, but it's a lot, it's more professional looking, and there's no arbitrary each episode has to be 20 minutes kind of a thing, where the anime had to add some stuff because they had to stretch out the story a little bit, so an episode could be 5 minutes or it could be 30, if they string a couple episodes together, but they're making it look like the manga did. So I'm kind of more into that.
I mean, I know One Piece is a really long series, but the best way I can describe One Piece compared to other storylines is One Piece is more like The Hobbit, whereas other storylines in anime are about The Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit is about the journey. It's not about the end goal. The end goal is just part of it. In fact, they go out of their way, it seems to ignore the end goal as much as they can, other than stating this is our end goal. all the time, and it's a very arbitrary,
Yeah.
not like tangible end goal. And so I think it kind of takes the soul out of the anime. Yeah, like even though yes, there are some filler, One Piece is one of the few series where it's actually a lot of it isn't filler.
Yeah.
I know there's a few what you would call filler episodes, but even then they don't really detract. Um, like One Piece is like anyone who has ever played D&D, a D&D campaign where everyone's just having fun versus a D&D campaign where everyone's just trying to beat the big bad boss.
Yeah.
It's about the fun you have with your friends, not about getting to the goal. Is the best way.
Yeah, and that's all well and good, and I'd like that if it just didn't have over 900 episodes to try and catch up on. Like, yeah.
Well, it's been around a while, man. And it's been consistent. The guy in charge of it's just been consistently writing both manga chapters and just like content for it. I don't know. I guess for me, I like all of it. I like the fact that it's an anime that doesn't take itself too seriously. I like that it's just a fun little adventure. In fact, I think if One Piece ever gets finished, which the creator said he does intend to finish it, there is going to be an end. I think I think the most controversial part about it is going to be its end. Because that's the end of the journey, and everyone's watching it for the journey.
That's true. I think, though, like, from what I saw, like, there weren't whole episodes, of course. I've just watched, like, the first 3 episodes. But there were, like, little scenes that were there in the anime, but weren't there in the manga. And I just, like, if the guy is writing the manga, like, he would have written those scenes if he wanted those scenes. So I feel like if you edit it down to what's only in the manga, it would be a better experience, right?
No, I disagree. So I think the thing a lot of people like forget about the mediums between reading something, even if it's like a comic or a manga series, versus a actual show / movie, is that it's really easy to fit like with books or even just chat or like comic book pages, events. It's very easy to fit what feels like a lot of time into just a few pages. Whereas in the medium of shows or movies, you now have to translate that. So it's not that like they want to hit that 20-minute time slot, but like if it's a beautiful drawing and a beautiful scenery and it looks good, I don't mind that in my anime. Like, if it was like filler, like, I'm gonna just like bring up another anime, like Naruto filler or Bleach filler, where you have an entire season that is not dedicated at all to what's relevant at the time. In fact, half the time they're like going back in time, like to an event, not like time traveling, but just like going back to previous events that they like, oh, by the way, this happened in the past. Like, then I understand. Yeah, I think that's dumb. I don't think that's staying true to it. But if your big thing is, oh, I don't think it's staying true because they added a scene of more trees and maybe this character in this setting that's more obscure. I don't think that's untrue to it. It doesn't detract from the story. It doesn't hurt the canon. They need to make it 20 minutes. Like, whether you like that or not.
Yeah.
And I guess the way I look at it is you're wanting to finish it.
That's
you're
true.
wanting to get caught up.
Yeah.
I just want to enjoy it.
So
I think that's the difference.
To bring up one specific example of one of the differences, so that we have something concrete to talk about. So in the Zoro, getting Zoro kind of little episode, when you first are getting introduced to him, the little girl tries to give him the rice cakes, and the son of the captain comes in, and he says, like, if you were an adult, you'd be put to death, but since you're just a little kid, just he talks to one of his subordinates, one of the Marines, and says, go, throw her over the wall, and the Marine's like, what? she's just a little girl. Like, what? Are you questioning me? Do you want me to tell my dad on you? And so then he throws her over the wall. And in the in the manga and in One Piece, that's all there is. You see her like, do you want me to tell my dad on you? And then you see her flying over the wall. In the anime, though, he crouches down next to her and says, "Sorry about this. Try curling up into a ball," and then throws her over. And I feel like adding that element kind of gives away a little too early that these Marines are not as into what's going on with the captain and his son as they appeared to be. So it's kind of, while that's a real interaction that may have happened there, it's added, and it's not consistent with what I think the manga was trying to show. You know?
I mean, I can see that, but I don't know, I like that. Because in a good portion of the series, like, obviously the Marines are the antagonists, which is ironic because we consider them to be the good guys. And some of them are good guys, but a lot of them aren't good people either. And I feel like that's a pretty important distinction early on in the series. I feel like that's a good thing. I like that because really early on in the series, you get shown, here's how mean the Marines are. This is the establishment. You should hate the establishment. But it shows right off the bat that not everyone in the establishment is this horrible, mean person.
But see, that is done in the very next episode when the captain is defeated and all the Marines cheer. And then that's a surprising moment when all the Marines start cheering. And even Luffy's like, "What? Why are you guys all happy? I thought you guys were into what was going on." And they say, "No, we hated that guy. He was horrible. And, thank you for freeing us from the tyrant." So like that moment loses some of its weight because we've already seen, well, these Marines obviously aren't into it. So that's not missing in the manga. It's just delayed. And when it's delayed like that, it's more impactful.
I don't know. I guess as someone who's looked into both, I don't feel that way. I enjoy it just as much either way. I don't think I can say I would enjoy one more than the other. I can appreciate both.
Okay.
I
might just have to watch the original anime and the dub and stuff, and then watch One Piece as well to see what was actually in the manga, just so I know both. I might have to do that, which would take even longer, but darn it, I want to know.
Well,
or I guess I could just read the manga alongside the actual anime.
That's one way that'd be a way to do it. I think the biggest factor that like I said earlier, I think the biggest factor is some people go into a series wanting to just enjoy the ride. Other people want to get to the end of the ride for their series. You're the kind of person who wants to get to the end of the ride. So I don't know if there's any anything for you.
Well, I do want to enjoy the ride on the way. And I don't mind if it takes a long time. I know it's going to take a long time because there's 900 episodes and over 1,000 chapters, I think. But it's okay if it takes a long time. I want to do it right. That's what I want to do. So this is doing it right. I'm trying to find out what's the right way to enjoy One Piece.
I think another thing too is I don't feel like you should the creator of it is involved in the anime too. Yeah. So I don't feel like it's less pure because it's the anime versus the manga. I don't feel like you're losing out on anything. I guess I'm also one of those people where when I hear people say you should watch Star Wars in this order, it makes it better. Like if you watch it for your first time, I'm one of those people where I'm like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that might make it better for certain people. I'm just saying I feel like the people who say the machete order is the one and only way to watch Star Wars, Mm-hmm. To me, it's you're wanting this perfect recipe of how to watch it. And I feel like that fact alone shows that we come at it from two different angles. I just want to sit back and watch it. You need to have the perfect viewing experience.
Well, when they put it on such a pedestal of how important it is to them, having everything perfect in one of their friends' first viewings of it, that might be really important, you know?
I mean, I feel like if someone needs that kind of situation to enjoy a media, those are the kind of people when I feel like they're being just a bit too picky. Like,
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
That's how I see it, I guess. Like, I have a lot of friends. I have a few friends who are very picky about some of their medias, and ironically, I enjoy almost every one of those medias that they like and hate, and then vice versa for my other friends. Like, I don't like where like I'm going to use Star Wars as an example again. I wasn't a huge fan of where Episode 7 went, and there were parts of the story I felt like I got cheapened out on. But like, from a sit down and just enjoy it experience, I can enjoy it. Cinematically, it's beautiful. Did I get the story I wanted? No, not really.
Yeah.
But like, I can appreciate what's there. At least I enjoyed the cinematics. I also feel like people once you get disappointed in something, it's easier to nitpick. Like, there are things we forgive in certain medias, but if it occurs in another media where they also did a few more things wrong, suddenly those little things become a bigger deal to us.
Yeah.
Like when people argue the physics of Episode 7, I think it's hilarious because I'm like, physics never had anything to do with this Star Wars series, guys. Now you're just looking for reasons to hate it.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys, they're space wizards. I don't know how else to put that. Like, but yeah, I personally think that you should, if you wanted to like just not feel like if you wanted to watch it the most optimal way, there are like little story arcs and islands they visit that definitely aren't like relevant to the primary part of the story, at least to the best of my knowledge, currently in the anime. That being said, who knows if it'll be relevant later.
Yeah.
Also, again, the whole point of the series is that little fun journey. There's a reason up till a certain point in the series, they're literally just island hopping, having a good time. Because that was the point of the series.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to get their bodies back. They weren't trying to collect all the Dragon Balls. They're going after the One Piece, which in and of itself is a very ambiguous named treasure. And even the bigger portions of the story and the bigger parts of the world that they're slowly revealing right now, I'm not going to say any of them because I don't want to ruin anything for you. But even then, they're very ambiguous and they don't give a lot of information out on them.
Yeah.
So, like, the whole series is all about not really giving you too much information on the end stuff and more about just enjoy the boat ride. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think the way you want to watch it is wrong. I just don't feel like the way watching the whole thing is wrong either.
I did see a lot of people online talking about One Piece and saying they hate people who tell new watchers to watch One Piece, and they would prefer people to watch the original, and then if you wanted to rewatch sections, One Piece is a fine way to do it a little faster because it cuts out the stuff that's not necessary. So like, it's a good for rewatching and remembering old stories that you've already seen, but for a first time viewing, a lot of the fans were saying One Piece wasn't as good.
I haven't seen One Piece, so I wouldn't know what they cut out, but I might agree with that.
Yeah.
I would have to look into it first, though. And honestly, I don't know if I want to go back and watch One Piece versus One Piece, because I enjoy the little things in a series. Mm-hmm. So if I felt like they were being taken out, I might not enjoy it as much.
There was also a really confusing thing. I'm sure it'll make sense later, but in the manga, or no, in the anime, there were scenes of this girl pirate that was sneaking around the background doing stuff, and none of those scenes, like, she has not appeared yet in the manga or in One Piece. And so I wonder how the manga introduces her and why that's so different from how the anime decided to introduce her so early on.
Interesting.
It's kind of interesting. You probably know.
Oh, I'm not 100% sure. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who you're talking about, but I think I know. But yeah.
Yeah, she was sneaking around in the background during those first 3 or 4 episodes, doing stuff with. I should silence my phone.
Probably.
But doing stuff with like stealing treasure on the same ship that Luffy and them are on.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah, so she's there in the anime, but she's nowhere to be found in the manga yet, up to that point. So, in
You're
fact,
not
in the
very
anime,
far in, are you?
No, I said he just saved Zoro. That's it. Like 4 episodes.
Yeah, okay.
But I watched those 4 episodes in like 3 different versions, and also read the manga just to see like the differences at the very beginning, to see like which one I wanted to watch more. So.
Gotcha.
So that's why it took me a while, and that's why I'm only that far in. But yeah, so like it's up to the point where in the anime she like stole a map that had like some character on it that she's like, I've got to hunt him down now to find the real map. In the anime, but the manga still has never mentioned her. So like I'm just wondering how the manga introduced her. If the anime has done all this work on her so far,
Gotcha.
It's just kind of interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll do some more watching on that, and maybe we'll talk about that next time. But I think it's time to move on to one of our topics.
Agreed. So for one of our topics today, we're going to discuss video games. Are old ones really better than the newer ones? Just are classic games just inherently better than the new stuff coming out?
So where are we drawing the line between classic and new stuff?
I would say, I'm trying to think, what did Ocarina of Time originally come out on?
The N64.
So we're going to say N64 and prior. Let's go with
that. Does that include the PS1?
I think it does.
I think it would. Yeah, I think the PS1 came out and then the N64, or maybe it was the other way around. I'm not sure. I would include PS1 and N64 and back.
Agreed. That's how I would do it.
Okay, so anything Xbox, PS2, and GameCube and on, that's newer stuff.
Agreed.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, we completely neglect to mention anything about Sega or any of those kinds of
if you
consoles,
want to mention Sega
because I never
stuff,
owned any
go
of them.
for it. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't own Sega stuff either, so So for those of you who don't know, listeners wise, I play video games, but I can hardly call myself I would definitely be a filthy casual. I don't even consider myself a gamer. And after you hear a few of my opinions, you're gonna agree with that.
Yeah. Then I'm a little more of one, but I haven't been recently because I've been so swamped with stuff. So like I've played WoW during high school and stuff. I played it a bunch, raided in a guild and everything, went into heroic raids and everything. I was super into that and super into like all the games that were coming out, but I've really fallen off the bandwagon at this point. But that means that I've played a lot of the older games a lot more than the newer games. So I might be a little skewed in that direction because of just what I've experienced.
Agree. Like I could see that. So my background on games, and this is I feel like important. So I'm 27 years old, so I grew up with like old Blizzard games. I also didn't have a console until I was in like late middle school. And it was a GameCube. So I had a.
So you never even played any of these classics we're talking about.
I did
when they came out.
I actually did, just I didn't own them.
Oh, so, okay. You like at a friend's house and stuff,
or my cousins or something. Yeah. So like I played Mario Kart. I played Pokemon. I'm trying to remember. It's Pokemon League. Is that what it's called?
The Stadium.
Pokemon Stadium, that's what it is. Sorry. Yeah, Pokemon Stadium, that kind of stuff. Like, however, the ones I owned and played like a lot more growing up would have been like computer games. So, but I got introduced to RPGs, both MMO and regular, as well as even like basic jumper games. There was like a side-scrolling shooter game that was like a rabbit that was like older. There's one called Bug. It was essentially Mario, but it was in 3D, and it was a 3D landscape. So,
Oh,
yeah, like I have a pretty just because of it was because computers could handle more back then, obviously, and still can. But like back then, it was a much wider margin. I got to experience most video game types growing up.
cool. So, where do you fall in this debate?
I think people. So, my personal opinion. This is where I'm going to be called a horrible gamer for this. My personal opinion is that there are still older games out there that hold well, even in our current time frame. For example, I'm playing Diablo 2 again. I am a big Diablo 2 fan. I believe that the golden age of video games is right now.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this is it. Like obviously technology keeps getting better, so things could get cooler. But I think where we're at right now is like pretty good compared to what I grew up with.
Yeah, I did just last night play with my brother-in-law a bunch of the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and that was fun. We just played online with other people, like multiplayer stuff, and I was holding my own, and it was interesting. Yeah, yes, I had to use a thumbstick instead of a mouse, and I was very internally upset by that, but I was able to enjoy the experience regardless, and I was actually surprisingly accurate, and found that especially in that game, a lot less of the success came from being able to aim right, and a lot more of the success came from knowing where to go and how to work with your teammates in order to support them and not just run in the middle of where a bunch of enemies are and die immediately.
Yeah.
It's a lot more strategy of where you're moving than skill with how you aim. So,
Gotcha.
but I did enjoy that, and that's a very recent game and modern, and it was a fun experience. I do think I think it does depend on the genre for which side I come down on. So for first person shooters, that kind of, it started with Doom, of course, like classic, but it has only gotten better as time has moved on. There have been some mechanics that have made it a little less fun, I'd say, with like, you get injured and then you just have to duck behind a rock for 5 seconds and you're full health again. That's like it came from Halo with their overshield, but and it's been in most modern shooter games since. And so that's kind of like annoying because you're waiting around and it's not a fulfilling experience. Like I would prefer there'd be med packs. You keep your damage, you have a health bar, and you find med packs around the place to get your health back so that you can last more than 1 second against an enemy. But of course, that's not how they work now. But there's still games that do that. Like I think. I don't know. Does Counter-Strike have that kind of thing, or is it like the modern? Like,
I know.
You get injured,
I don't
you
know
hide
about,
behind a wall.
I can't speak for all the Counter-Strike games, but the one I played with my friend in the past, it was one of the older ones. It was health packs. It was not hide behind. You retain your damage. Also, death occurs a hell of a lot more quickly.
Yeah.
Like a legendary mode on Halo quickly. You get caught in the open, a few bullets and you're dead.
Yeah.
Or depending on the gun, one shot and you're dead.
And that's so what it was like for Modern Warfare when I was playing. Like if they had the right gun, bam, one shot, you're dead. Or just a couple, like it was split seconds and you made a mistake and now you're in the open and you're dead. It was pretty intense too. But like if you only got a couple shots instead of like the 4 that you needed to die, then you could hide behind a wall and then after 5 seconds you'd be fine. So it's kind of, I don't know. I guess that makes it more like it makes it slow down necessarily because you have to wait and hide behind a wall. But it also kind of makes it speed up because you don't have to run and find a health pack. Like you don't have to you didn't just die from those 1 or 2 shots and have to respawn somewhere else. You're still in the action. So maybe that is
in Counter-Strike,
better.
you had to buy the health pack at the beginning of the game too.
Oh.
You don't find it. You buy your equipment at the beginning, and that's what you're stuck with.
Okay.
So, and you get set money limits on what you can buy.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to choose between body armor or a better gun. And some guns, body armor is necessary for, but others, body armor doesn't do anything against. So if you're fighting someone who has a large clip capacity, typically the body armor will actually help.
Yeah.
But if you're fighting someone with a single shot rifle, typically the body armor doesn't do much. But those people are also really vulnerable to multiple groups of people.
Yeah. Yeah. If you stick with a buddy, you're 10 times more likely to survive than if you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's one genre that I think that time has improved on, despite the one mechanic that I'm not as fond of. But overall, I think it's better.
What's one that you think older games are better on?
JRPGs. And now, it doesn't have to be made by a Japanese company to be a JRPG. It's just a set of not guidelines, but qualities that a RPG has to have to be considered one, and those qualities are found from early RPGs that were made in Japan, like Final Fantasy and stuff like that. So, but JRPGs
Pokemon, would you consider that one? Would you consider Pokemon a JRPG?
Not
because I would, and that's what they remind me of. Actually,
yeah, they do.
Mechanically, the only difference is you have a pocket monster instead of a black mage.
Yeah, and it's only 1v1. Most JRPGs are a group of between 2 and 4 people. Sometimes you're by yourself, but you always face multiple enemies. So that's another
unless
difference.
It's a boss though.
Yeah, but then it's most of the time when you're fighting a boss.
There are obviously single enemies.
You get 3 or 4 people with you.
I don't know. That feels surface level.
Yeah, but it is integral to the combat. I don't know. I think it is. It's a variation on a JRPG, but I think by this point, it has strayed so far from that in the modern Pokemon games that it's hard to call it one.
Okay.
But yeah, it would kind of be one. It's its own genre, Pokemon games. They've got enough differences that you can't really lump them into any kind of category like that.
Okay.
So the JRPGs that I'm talking about, like Final Fantasy, like Wild Arms, Chrono Trigger, those kinds of just classic NES, SNES, even PS1 era RPGs that are just you go through a big sweeping story with your characters and you level them up and make them better, and they're go through the story and you get to be attached to them, and so the story is very important in a JRPG. So the only game that has come close in recent memory to that is Octopath Traveler, and I've been playing a lot of that, and it's been pretty good. I'm nearing the end of it. It seems a little, if I had to give it any kind of criticism though, it seems a little cookie cutter. So you have 8 characters and you can have 4 of them with you at any time, and each of the characters has their own story that has 4 chapters, and you start a chapter by entering the town that the chapter takes place in and saying, yes, I want to do this story now. And so then it does that story, and you just have to do, quest by quest, like what the story wants you to do, and then you finish the story. There's no real choices to be made, and there's no interaction between the stories. All 8 stories are just self-contained.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if maybe there's going to be some sort of big story that draws them all together when I finish the 4th chapter of each of the 8 people, because I haven't done that yet. I've just finished the 4th chapter for 2 of them. But so once I get there, I can tell you if it gets epic like most JRPGs would, like where you go and you have to kill God basically, or if it just kind of finishes those stories and says good job, I don't know. But the gameplay though is very rewarding and very awesome and very JRPG like, with its turn-based combat that's it kind of reminds me of like Final Fantasy X, where you got to see who was attacking next. And you did a lot of strategy that way, because I have two guys that are gonna be able to do stuff before the boss attacks, and so one of them can heal people and the other can attack, and then I'm good for the boss attack, and my people will stay alive. So it's it's a lot of strategy and being able to buff your guys with higher strength or higher defense that lasts a couple turns. So you need to make sure you do it at the right time. Anyway, it's pretty good. But that's like the only one in like at least 2 decades. No, like 1.5 maybe. Like the last 15 years, I can't think of a good JRPG that has come out that like since Final Fantasy IX, since on the PS1. I guess Final Fantasy X was pretty good, but not. I don't know. It seems like after 10, it just dropped, and none of the big Final Fantasies, none of the other companies that made JRPGs have been as good since then, except for that one game. So that's where I would say, so for first-person shooters, modern games have it, but for JRPGs, I definitely have to go with classic ones.
Okay. For me, I can't think of a genre that has not benefited from. I don't really play a lot of JRPGs, so I won't speak on that one too much. But I personally can't think of a genre that hasn't benefited from modern gaming and both computing and graphics. And I don't think stories have necessarily gotten worse, because some older classic games didn't even have a story. I'm sorry, but running through the Mushroom Kingdom to save the princess from a giant turtle is not a story. It is a simple goal.
Yeah,
but
something to motivate you. That's all it needed to be.
Exactly. So like I think RPGs is probably the first one I'd start with. Like I said, I'm replaying Diablo 2, and I should start out by saying I prefer Diablo 2 over Diablo 3. However, my reason, honestly, if they did one thing differently for Diablo 3, I would like Diablo 3 better. And it's as simple as impactful leveling. Diablo 3 forces levels upon you and then just gives you access to everything. And I liked being able to create my character that was individually strong in a certain way and have a build that wasn't based entirely on my gear. Where, death matters more too, in my opinion. If you die and you can't get to your body again, then you lose all your stuff. I think the reason that's, before you leave the game, you have as many opportunities going back into the area to try and get your stuff back. But if you had to leave, like if you had to save and quit because you have stuff to do, your punishment is, maybe you shouldn't have been fighting Diablo on hell difficulty before you were ready. Whereas in Diablo 3, I can just keep on respawning. Both have a gold reduction on you, but in Diablo 3 that means even less too, because your potions are a cooldown instead of something you buy. Whereas I was fighting Baal with an underleveled character on Diablo 2 the other day, and I ended up spending a good 10,000 gold on potions because I had to go back and get potions regularly. So, and it was my fault for doing it underleveled, but I also wanted to complete that portion so I could start doing some grinding work. And bottom line, in Diablo 3, I wouldn't have even felt pressure from that. But I actually was like, I can't die, and I need to like eventually make progress because I only have so much gold to blow through.
But doesn't that cut against what you were just saying with how all games improve over time? Like you're saying now that Diablo didn't.
Oh, right? No, yeah. Well, I was saying that's one example. That's why I'm giving a counter example first. I'm starting with this is where I think a problem is. But here's the problem for that one. They made it, and this is funny coming from a casual player, they made it too casual. I liked how my decisions mattered in Diablo 2. Character decisions. Story-wise, I think there's gripes, but like I said, I'm not as picky as other people, and I enjoy it so far. However, my counter-argument is actually going to be interesting. It's going to be, and just so everyone knows, don't immediately leave the podcast because the person on the other end totally disagrees with me. I think Ocarina of Time is one of the most overrated games ever. And I think that, like, it's best, like, the evolution that, however, I do think it's like Halo 1 and that it was necessary for the evolution of RPGs like it. And I think what's one of the best series that has ever come out of a game like it is the Dark Souls and Sekiro series. My only gripe about Dark Souls, and this is because I am a filthy casual, is not being able to pause the game and go to work. Because I don't always have a lot of time to spend on a game. So it's really important for me that I am able to just pause a game and go to work. And that's where I would lead into Sekiro, where it's everything I've wanted in that kind of RPG, where I can just pause it. I know that, like, that's part of the fun of Dark Souls is you can't just pause. But it's like, some of us don't have 10 hours to blow on a video game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like, that is the reality of it. Everyone and to any of you who say that makes it not as difficult or as fun, I have never seen so many people bitch and moan about the difficulty of game as I have seen Dark Souls players bitch about how hard Sekiro is. Huh. And if you're playing it like a Dark Souls game, you are 100% correct.
Oh, really?
It is.
So they're making it harder for themselves because they just don't know how to play it right?
It's as simple as this. In Dark Souls, everyone got used to rolling. And Sekiro is a much more aggressive game. In fact, the hardest bosses in Sekiro are ones that fight you like Dark Souls bosses. Where you actually suddenly need to jump or dodge away from something. But the game is designed around facing your opponent head on.
Okay. So I mean, I haven't played much of Dark Souls or Sekiro or anything like that. So, but finish what you were going to say about them.
Well, I was going to say, and ultimately though, the reason I'm willing to say that Sekiro and Dark Souls are a million times better than Ocarina of Time is as simple as its combat. In Ocarina of Time, as much as I wanted to love it, and I really tried, I got it as a birthday present. My friend wanted me to play it and wanted me to enjoy it as much as he did, and I really wanted to like it. Because keep in mind, I'm the kind of person who can enjoy movies and genres that other people have like a million little gripes with.
Yeah.
I felt like it was literally just wasting my time every chance it got. Unskippable conversations. The combat is literally just sit there and wait for the opponent to make his opportunity and hit them. It's all about just waiting and waiting and waiting. And the story, I'm sorry, isn't that good compared to other game stories. Like, it's literally just, here, big bad immortal guy, you need to correct these ancient Deus Machina powers to beat him. Like, you need to go collect the special sword. Like, it's very generic. And I think for its time, it was a great video game. But its time is kind of over. Like, it's the same reason most first-person shooters have started originally, most first-person shooters copied, like you had brought up, copied Halo, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Now first-person shooters are copying Call of Duty. Games copy the things that are successful and good about a franchise. And I don't see anyone, including the newest Zelda games, copying Ocarina of Time's combat systems and gameplay systems. It's just not.
Well, I mean, Z targeting was the first.
Sorry, I should say.
Kind of in Ocarina of Time.
Other than like
that
Z targeting,
is almost in.
Z targeting is a staple, but I don't see anyone going out of their way to have that fight where you're fighting two skeletons and you sit there and the majority of the fight is you just waiting for them to lunge so you can get a cheap shot, and then waiting for them to lunge again so you can get a cheap shot. I'm not saying you can't play other video games like that. I'm just saying that's like the way you play it.
Yeah. So enemy design has definitely improved through future games. And I don't think that the combat is really the most impressive part of Ocarina of Time. But since then, I don't think I've seen a single game that has, so it has combat in it, but it also has puzzles and like dungeons that are as detailed and interesting as Ocarina of Time.
Well, I don't even think the puzzles were that difficult though. That was the thing. Like if I was,
they were designed like so that kids could do it, but like they were fun puzzles, you know.
Well, if I was going to use like puzzles as an example, I would say Darksiders and the newest one actually, Breath of the Wild, did phenomenally. I understand people wanted the big dungeons back for Breath of the Wild, and they got, like, I've heard the argument of, instead of getting big dungeons, we got the little mini dungeons in the form of the I forget what they're called, like the time temples. However, like the puzzles in them were actually enjoyable and fun.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
They were well thought out too. They weren't just copy paste. There were quite a few dungeons.
What I would conclude is why, like, I enjoy playing it to this day and you don't, is I played it when I was a kid. So whenever I play it now, it kind of takes me back to that mindset. And in that mindset of being a kid, I can still enjoy it. But since you didn't have that original experience with it, you're coming at it in the mindset of an adult who has better things to do. So it's like, I think that
not even better things to do, just better games to play.
Well, that too. Like, it's just you because of like the cutscenes, like small little inconveniences. Like I don't want to skip those cutscenes because I love them. They're nostalgic. They bring back something that I enjoyed when I was a kid, and so I get that. And like, I don't want to skip them. Since you didn't have that experience and aren't nostalgic for those cutscenes, you want to skip them because you don't care about the story. So it's like that whole gripe of that's just every single cutscene you get a little more annoyed at it. You know, none of that annoyance exists when I play it because of just a different perspective and a different desire. So it's like, it's hard to, you can't, I can't judge Ocarina of Time separated from my experience as a child playing it. So, call that nostalgic, rose-tinted glasses or whatever, but I can still enjoy it. And so...
Well, and just so you know, I don't knock you for feeling that way, and I wouldn't knock anyone for feeling that way. I completely understand that. I really am a fan of a lot of games that other people aren't, and some of it might be nostalgia based, and I'll admit it full on, and I'll say that's not a valid reason for me to say it's a great game.
Like Diablo 2.
And I'm not saying that it wasn't.
I never played Diablo 2 as a kid, and I can't play it now because the graphics are just too bad for me. I can't appreciate what's going on in around me because it all looks so pixelated and trashy compared to what I saw first, which was Diablo 3. So like I can't go backwards and appreciate that. Like every time I'm looking at the screen, I'm just getting more and more annoyed at how bad the representation is and how bad that animation looked and how and so I'm getting annoyed because I never experienced it as a kid when that stuff wouldn't have bothered me.
And I think that is a completely valid reason to criticize it.
Okay.
I think a remaster, like something a lot of Diablo 2 fans have asked for, is a remastered Diablo 2 simply because they want to be able to share that experience with other people, and they know that the graphics are garbage by standards of today. Mm-hmm. They know it's a dated game. And for the record, I don't think Diablo 2... I think all the things he said about Diablo 2 are completely valid things to criticize about it. It is not as pretty as other games. It was made forever ago now in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So my big thing is, and I think this is the important thing, We both have things we're nostalgic about. And I think sometimes we are unable to look at it from an outside perspective as a result. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. A lot of older people like me and you who grew up with older video games, with older consoles, back when video games were not as prevalent. We grew up in that situation, and so like we have our little rose-tinted moments, and we don't want to admit that maybe games are getting better. But I see so many people my age, like video games just aren't what they used to, and I'm just like, I think they're getting better. Like when I look back growing up, the games I played that I genuinely enjoyed were very few. And nowadays, I feel like I have all these options. And like a lot of them, like I just can't get to them all in time. I think a good example too of how like time distorts how good we think something is and how different generations might appreciate things differently would actually be the Mass Effect series. For the record, I didn't play it when it came out. I only just finished it a little while ago. And I played it from 1 to 3, and I think it's one of the best video game series I have ever played. And 3, despite what anyone tries to tell me, is my favorite. And just that response that you just gave me, a lot of people are like, are you like people who are like my age look at me like I'm insane. Yeah. But I hate to break it to those people, but Mass Effect 3 right now on like critic websites, and this is user scores, I'm not using critic scores, is higher than things like The Witcher 3. So people who like, I hate to break it to you, I'm not saying you're old and therefore you're out of touch. I'm simply saying that like maybe there's something there you weren't quite getting. And someone actually pointed something important out to me, and I actually agree with this. He said that the advertising when Mass Effect 3 came out made it seem like you were going to get one experience and then everyone got a different one. And that is a 100% valid criticism for why those people are disappointed.
Yeah. It's kind of, it was expectations. Yeah.
Yeah. They had an expectation. Whereas people like me, I didn't really see those. And if I did, I don't remember those advertisements in the PR campaign. And people who are just, who aren't even old enough to be a part of it definitely don't know anything about it. So they go in and they play it and they're like, oh, that was pretty neat and satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things I was told were either inaccurate or were spun out of proportion by other people too.
Yeah, I think that kind of hysteria surrounding it had that kind of effect. It had that kind of mass effect.
You're bad and you should feel bad.
But like it made people kind of exaggerate things. And then they had their own echo chamber, and they kind of played off of the other exaggerations and just made themselves hate it more than they already did based off of that. So that kind of, it makes total sense.
So,
but yeah, it's just I never played them, so I can't say from experience. But yeah, I do remember when it came out that everyone, it seemed, hated it, and so yeah, to hear that its score is high is crazy, because it must have been just the few major big fans that really wanted it, that were so vocal about it and made it, crafted the narrative that was the way it is and that it was bad. But then most of the people who played it just enjoyed it, and so gave it a good score or whatever. But the funny thing is that idea that it was bad went all the way till their next game, Andromeda, and then everyone's like, well, see, they screwed up 3 and now they screwed up Andromeda. Like, we thought we gave them a second chance and they messed it up again because there was a bunch of glitches or something. And so it's like that, but that's the only thing that I've heard about Mass Effect 3 and Andromeda. Was 3 was bad because the ending sucked, and Andromeda was a buggy piece of crap, and so how typical, and
yeah.
so that was just kind of, it felt a little unfair, I guess. And so now hearing that, I'm like, well, okay, so maybe it wasn't as bad, and maybe Andromeda also wasn't as bad as people made it seem, because now I can't really trust them, you know?
Well, I mean, Andromeda actually was pretty buggy. And,
okay.
I mean, the best way I can put it, dude, is EA made it around the same time they were doing their whole Battlefront 2 debacle.
Oh.
So to say that just because 3 had bad, like, I get where you're trying to go from. You're like, now I don't feel like I can trust anything. And I haven't played Andromeda, for the record. Any of you who like it, that's awesome. But like, from what I've seen, would I pay $20 maybe to play it? Possibly. Would I pay 60? Hell no.
Yeah.
But that's mostly because I refuse to pay for a full price for an unfinished game.
So they never like patched it and made those bugs better or anything?
Not to the best of my knowledge, and if they did, it's a bit too little too late. I still wouldn't trust the product, especially at a full product price.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem, is they like I'm already now wary. And if I listen to the loud loud minority, then or it could be the loud majority, then I'm getting an inaccurate representation.
Yeah.
So at this point,
it's hard to tell how
really
many
hard
there are.
for me to. Yeah. So most of the time I say you play a game for yourself and decide for yourself, because I feel like a lot of times people would be surprised. But I also feel like a lot of times it's like people get ostracized for having a certain opinion about a game. Like, you know, how like I spoke ill of Ocarina of Time, so if we had thousands of followers, I guarantee you thousands of people would be upset with me for what I just said. Because I dared speak ill of the holy sanctity that is this classic game.
Yeah. I think
you know, so I feel like there is a stigma to speaking your mind on video games and genres. Like, turns out at my workplace, there are a lot of people who enjoyed Star Wars Episode 7. No one talks about it because of the 3 people who throw a giant fucking hissy fit.
and even
when you mention
hearing your opinion on it, that it was enjoyable as a movie, but then, you know, if you're a big fan, of course, it wasn't what you wanted. Like, it kind of gave me like, oh, I guess that's not a weird opinion to have, because like I enjoyed it too, and I'm not that big of a fan of Star Wars. Like, I just enjoyed the movie, and yeah, I could see all the things that the people complained about, but I wouldn't have come up with those complaints on my own. Like, it seemed just fine, you know.
when at this point, when the people at work try to like throw a hissy fit when anyone talks about it in a good light, my response is always to like loudly walk in the middle of them and just say, I like laser swords.
Yeah.
Like, because that's like what the reason. Like, that's a pretty good reason to like Star Wars.
Why did they start calling them
just
that?
liking? Huh?
Why did they start calling them laser swords?
Wait, do they actually call them that in the new movie? I called them laser swords because I was trying to sound derpy.
Oh, see,
because it's a good way to.
I was talking to someone who said that they'd been calling lightsabers laser swords for the last like couple movies, and I was like, I don't remember that.
I thought
what?
I think someone jokingly called something a laser sword, but again, it wasn't meant in a serious light. It was meant in a
like they didn't know any better kind of way.
I like that character, like Han Solo being like,
yeah.
Once upon a time, I didn't care, like believe in the laser swords and the religion and the hocus pocus. Like, he's obviously saying it like he's purposely misportraying it and not saying it in a serious or like. So I think someone did, but I don't think it was intended as a serious name. It was intended as a jestful comment.
Well, that just goes to show you how ridiculous the new Star Wars haters are. They'll make up giant like, oh yeah, they stopped calling them lightsabers and started calling them laser swords. Because seriously, someone told that to me.
I actually knew someone who's in the military he's one of the people who's fanatical about it. And one of the things he hates about it is how Finn is punished for not. Is it Finn? No, Poe Dameron is punished for essentially committing an act of treason And I asked him, I was like, so if you went ahead and did all the stuff he tried pulling, you'd be okay with it? Like, it'd be okay? Or if someone in your group, in your, like, what's it called? His squad did that, it would be okay? Well, no. I was like, but why? And he was like, well, clearly she's an idiot. And I was like, yeah, but you're watching it from an outside perspective. Like,
she's the commanding officer.
All right, think of it from this. Like, look, I'm not going to say she is like the best character ever and that everyone should forgive her, because my opinions are mixed on the whole movie. But here's what I can say. Everyone who thinks Poe is such a saint, like, he disobeyed direct orders. He got people killed. He was then demoted. And then he started acting without authority. Any of those things in real life or any real military structure, I'm sorry, but yes, the Resistance is a military organization, you would be punished. And yeah, you could be like, well, he's done so much and look at all this stuff he's done and yada, yada, yada. But like, this new person in charge, the thing she knows about Poe is he's a hothead. He gets results through his hot-headedness. And most recently, he was demoted for being incompetent by her general, who she still respects. Hell, I would have thrown him right in the brig. like, again, you kind of have to look at it from that perspective. But here's the big thing. Because she's not a pre-established character, everything she does is not okay. You like Poe because you've seen him for 2 movies. But like, logically, she did nothing wrong. Logically, she did the right thing. But because she's not a pre-established character, also Disney, the director, clearly went out of their way to put her decisions in the poorest light possible.
Yeah.
Like, it was on purpose. You're supposed to feel that way because it's supposed to be a big shocker at the end when it turns out, oh, she knew what she was doing all along.
Yeah.
And look how big of a hero she is. And like, Poe then feels bad. Like, so I think that's part of what it was too, is like that kind of bait and switch. But anyways, I think, yeah, we just went off on a huge tangent about our original topic. But I think, you think we could at least agree that a lot of times we let our past and our rose-tinted feelings about a video game make us feel like it's better than maybe it actually would be compared to today's stuff?
Well, I'd have to edit
sometimes,
that a little.
Not all the time.
Because what's to say that because something has nostalgia, that doesn't make it better than the current games? You know, if I'm having more fun playing Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time than I would playing the newest Darksiders, even though they're the same genre and, like, you know, you think it has been improved upon, you know, like, if I'm enjoying Ocarina of Time more because of nostalgia, doesn't that make it better to me?
I agree with that 100%.
So, like,
my question is more or less like, is the more the people treat older games like they're inherently better, like from like a technical and like just any level except maybe graphics, which I think they'd be idiots to argue that part. Like,
yeah,
the whole point of this conversation was maybe newer video games are better than people give them credit for. This attitude of, they just don't know how to make video games anymore. That's what I was arguing against.
Yeah, it's not like an objective quality that has gone down, it's a subjective one. So objectively, yeah, I would say the newer games are better, but then subjectively, I think that Ocarina of Time is better.
I 100% agree.
Because of my experience.
And I think that is 100% valid.
So, like, yeah. Okay. So separating objective and subjective, you know, better than it is what I would conclude then.
Agreed. So for our last and final topic, and we don't have as much time for this one, is going to be drugs. Should any of them that are currently illegal be made legal, and why? Or why do you think they should stay illegal?
Well, on this one, I mean, I'm conservative generally, but I lean a lot libertarian when it comes to actual law and social issues. So while I, like, as a religious person as well, would say, I'm not going to smoke weed, and I'm not going to drink alcohol, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes, I don't care if you guys do it, so make it legal and tax it. Simple as that. Anything above weed, though, it'd have to be a pretty strong case that just simply using it doesn't hurt a person's health so much so that it should be illegal to protect them from it.
I think we should avoid. I feel like we should avoid like just arbitrary it hurts your health.
Yeah.
Like if it's like serious, like bath salts where people like start like going insane, thinking they're zombies and trying to eat people.
And like PCP.
Yeah, PCP, stuff like that. I can see arguments for those because they cause you to start imposing your freedom on someone else. And that's where I
harming others.
That's where I usually draw the line. The like where I would say is like, so I've never done shrooms or like LSD, but I have friends who have, and honestly, it's not like the movie. Like, first off, just so you know, everything in the movies they show about drugs is usually wrong.
Yeah.
People who use alcohol do not act like they do in movies. People who use weed definitely don't act like they do in movies. And ironically, it turned so like I did not know this personally. I thought LSD made you hallucinate in really weird ways, but the way it was put to me, it's like, does it make you hallucinate things? Yes, but it's not like you're chasing a dragon around the street corner.
Mm-hmm. It's
more like you're hallucinating something on the TV, and now you're like really engaged on that TV. So less I'm going to go on a trip through the neighborhood and more I'm going to be really focused on this TV for a little while, guys. Or I am very amused by these fish in your fish tank.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that's like, I would say anything that isn't like PCP or bath salts, and tax it. Because like, and so I should start off by saying two things. Any of you have kids? There is a decent chance they're doing drugs, especially if they're teenagers. A very decent chance.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't think they are. And do I think we should be giving them to minors? No. I'm simply pointing out it is a very prevalent thing.
And I do think if a lot of
if you have never smoked weed, you are the weird one.
Well, I guess I'm the weird one. But yeah, I never did any drugs as a kid or any in my whole life. But what was I gonna say? If they are legal, then there's a lot smaller chance that the way they're getting them is sketchy. You know, if they're gonna get them, they're gonna get them. If it's illegal, then they're getting them through a black market, illegal, who knows what's in it kind of way. If they're legal, then they'll be getting them from like, you know, like people, the way minors get alcohol, they get someone to buy it for them. You know, it's not that hard for that to happen. But when they do that, it's a legally produced and sold product, just not to them, but it's got regulations on it, making sure that what's in it is all spelled out and not no cut corners. They know how much of the drug is in it, and so how much they can safely consume. You know, they'd be a lot more informed about what they're doing with the drug and use it a lot safer.
Yeah. I think the big thing we would see a change in would be things like regulation.
Yeah.
And in states that have already like legalized pot, like we have seen regulation on them. And it hasn't really hurt anything.
Yeah.
It's actually been better. One like heavily criticized, like there's people who like suddenly had needle exchange programs in their state and they are criticized for it. But like things like HIV and death rates kind of went down. So it's kind of hard for like, you know, you're trying to criticize this. Like the reality is when we start regulating these things get better in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. And heck, in the library that I work at, in the bathrooms, there are like safe needle disposal containers. And it's like, well, why would you need that? Why would you put that there? You're encouraging them. Like, no, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. It's better than put it in there than leave it on the ground for some random kid to accidentally stab themselves with and get AIDS. Like it's and there were also like little cards that they could grab and like that had a phone number on it for getting safe needles. And so like it's why would you encourage that? Why would you enable them by giving them needles? Like, no, they're gonna get the needles. It's just you're giving them a clean one rather than one that has AIDS on it. Again, it's like you're not encouraging anything. You're just making it so that they don't, when they do it, it's not as bad as it used to be. So it can only improve things, I think. So I like those kind of programs. And I think that making it legal would make it also a lot easier to help people. Because if people come in to help with like addiction, but they're addicted to illegal things, they're going to be a lot more caged and not as ready to open up and talk about that and get the help they need. But if it was legal, then they would be able to tell their therapist or their other people that they've been doing that and that they need help or whatever if they're addicted and need help. And
they're no longer scared to go get that help.
Yeah, they're not scared. Because like, what if they went there and then that therapist happened to be a bad one that breaks the confidentiality clause and gets them arrested because they're doing things that are illegal. You always have that fear. And so if it were legalized and destigmatized like that, then they would be able to get the help they need. So I can't think of any kind of bad outcome other than maybe people who wouldn't have crossed the line into illegal activity might try the drugs now because they're legal, but it would be so much safer for them to do so. And like, who's to say if they try it once, they'll be completely like unable to help themselves after that. Like it's not one and you're addicted. It's, that was you tried it out. Okay. Now, move on,
In fact, people putting things in drugs that would make it addictive would become a lot less common because there's government regulates.
That's true.
That like it's illegal to put addictive substances in your products, like stuff that like makes it like impossible. Like obviously sugar is arguably addictive, but nicotine is like 10 times worse.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it can only make things better. Also, like if you're like, well, I just don't see why we need to, it like simply saying, kids are doing it, whether you like it or not, and then going, and wouldn't it be nice if we could tax that?
Yep.
What if we legalized weed and taxed it, and now suddenly we have enough money to where you have a budget that can afford healthcare for everyone? What if weed paid for everyone's healthcare?
Yeah, or a universal basic income.
Or that, like something good. Like you could even package it like that, and then no politician other than saying like, I have religious reasons for being against this would have an argument. Yeah. And I don't believe that's a valid reason to make things illegal, because that's you imposing your personal beliefs on other people.
Yeah, if it's against your religion to do drugs, then just don't do them.
Yeah, it's that simple
as that. So I think we're pretty much in agreement for that one.
Agreed. That was a pretty easy one. Ironically, video games were the divisive topic.
Yeah, once again, our silly topic was the serious one.
Oh God, where is this world going?
Mm-hmm. All right, well, good news. The podcast is on Google and Apple Podcasts. It's on Stitcher, and I'm working on Spotify next, but it's got its own RSS feed, so any app that you want, that you use, you can plug in the RSS feed and it'll send you right to it. So subscribe to those wherever you like to get your podcasts, and we'll be releasing these hopefully weekly. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you all for listening. You guys have a wonderful week.